Have you ever found yourself with your cell phone in your hand, typing and deleting the same message 1,000 times, as if each word was a chance to reverse what already was? Have you ever felt that urge to block someone just to see if it hurts, or to send them a just to see if everything's okay, even though you know the answer would come coldly or not at all? Believe me, you are not alone. We've all begged in silence, disguising pride with maturity, when in fact what was missing was emotional clarity. But what if I told you that true power lies in what you don't do? That disappearing without giving an explanation can be more devastating than any fiery speech? In this video, you will understand why absence, when used well, turns into a multiplied presence, and how well-applied silence speaks louder than any attempt at dramatic closure. This content is not about games. It's about self-mastery, about how to regain your dignity without needing a stage. You will learn the art of becoming unreachable not out of pride, but out of emotional intelligence. Because sometimes, the best way to get noticed is when you stop trying to be seen. Get ready for a major turnaround, because what you will discover here could change not only the way you deal with others, but, most importantly, the way you treat yourself. Silence will stop being empty and become your greatest strategy. There are people who think that strength is talking, responding immediately, having the last word. But true power, the one that destabilizes, that disarms, and that leaves a mark that lives in silence. When you choose not to react, you break the expectations of those who expected control over you. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces the other person to face their own emptiness. And in this internal confrontation, regret begins. Reacting is instinctive. Silence is strategic. When you stop responding, you are not omitting yourself, you are saying, without words, that you no longer accept being manipulated. It's like a mirror that stops reflecting, forcing the person to look at themselves. This has a much greater impact than any impulsive outburst, because silence cannot be undone, it cannot be erased, it cannot be refuted. Have you ever noticed how some magic tricks only work when the magician leaves the scene at the right moment? It's the same with human relationships. When you leave before the applause or the chaos, you leave a void, a space that the other tries to fill with answers, theories, justifications. But he finds nothing, and the more you search, the more the mystery grows. Those who remain silent do not always consent. Sometimes it's just saving energy, because reacting all the time is exhausting. And most fights are just repetitions of old cycles, disguised as something new. When you choose not to play the game, you change the rules. You leave the position of a piece to assume that of a player, and a player who knows when to stop is what surprises the most. It's not about feigning indifference, but about cultivating a strength that comes from within. Silence shows that you don't need to prove anything, that you have enough control not to fall into the trap of wanting to explain yourself. And believe me, when you stop justifying yourself, you grow in the eyes of those who try to diminish you. The absence of defense becomes dignity. There are those who say that silence hurts, and it really hurts. But it hurts because it shows that the other no longer has access, not to your time, not to your emotions. It becomes a daily reminder of the freedom you have achieved. A silent reminder, but one that screams between the lines, I am no longer a hostage to your validation. If you've already tried to react, explain, make people understood, and nothing has changed, perhaps it's time to try another route. The way of silence. Because sometimes the hardest lesson anyone can learn is when you just stop trying to teach. And the most surprising thing? That's when they start to listen. Blocking is the end of the show. It's like closing the curtain before the last scene. It gives a quick, predictable endpoint, and precisely for that reason harmless. When you block, you give the other person what they want most, a clear outcome. Something she can understand, digest, and move on from. Now, disappearing that really messes with the mind. Disappear without warning, without drama, without scene. Leave the stage empty, but with the lights on. This creates a void that screams questions: will she come back? What happened? Did I do something wrong? Absence becomes an enigma, and the enigma is impossible to ignore. The difference between blocking and disappearing lies in psychology. Lockdown brings relief. Absence brings restlessness. When you block, the person feels rejected but understood. When you disappear, she feels forgotten and confused. And it is in this maze of uncertainty that regret is born. Disappearing requires more emotional strength, because it's not about wanting to cause pain, but about not harboring illusions. You're not saying goodbye. It's saying reflect. You are inviting the other person to face the silence they have caused. And that, my friend, is much more powerful than any scream. It's like leaving a door ajar in the middle of a dark forest. You don't know what's in there, but it calls you, pulls you, keeps you awake at night. The lock closes the door and says it's over. The silent disappearance maintains hope and doubt, and it is in this emotional confusion that the impact lies. But be careful, disappearing is not disappearing from yourself. It's not hiding from the world. It's disappearing from the lives of those who didn't know how to value you, while you continue building yours. It's like stepping off the stage and starting to direct your own play. Anyone who wants to watch will have to buy a ticket, and it won't always be available. So the next time you think about blocking someone, breathe. Instead, disappear. Become unreachable, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself. Because sometimes, what teaches the most is not the absence of words, but the absence of their presence. The human brain has a fascinating flaw. It hates unanswered questions. The more something defies logic, the more our mind struggles to understand it. That's why silence is disturbing and disappearance is addictive. Absence turns into an obsession, because what is clear is forgotten. What is enigmatic remains. Think about how many times you found yourself going through old messages, trying to understand where everything changed. This doesn't happen when there is an explanation. The mind pursues the unknown because it poses a threat to control. And the human ego hates not being in charge. That's when you become unforgettable, when you leave questions, not answers. When you remain silent, you give space for the other person to begin telling the story alone. And believe me, the mental script they create is much more intense than anything you would say. They wonder if they did something wrong, if you're better off without them, if they lost you for good. And this whirlwind is what holds them back the most. Excessive availability generates comfort, and comfort breeds carelessness. The mind does not value what is easy. She values what is scarce, rare, unpredictable. When you become a mystery, you become valuable. Because everyone wants to discover what they don't understand. And the more they try to decipher you, the more trapped they become in this attempt. It's the same principle as films that end with open endings. You leave the cinema thinking, creating theories, talking about it for days. Now imagine doing this with your presence. Strategically withdrawing, without explanation, and leaving the other person to deal with the what if. This does not go unnoticed. That marks it. Being a mystery does not mean being fake or manipulative. It means preserving yourself. It's knowing that you don't need to give yourself completely to be felt, that your value does not depend on being understood, but on being respected. Anyone who tries to understand everything all the time loses the ability to admire. So don't fear the unknown. Use it to your advantage. Leave blank spaces. Leave doubts. Let them think. Because while they try to understand where you ended up, that's where they keep you alive in their memory. Invisible to the eyes, but trapped in the mind. Have you ever noticed how some relationships feel like repeated episodes? The same fights, the same promises, the same outcomes. It's an emotional loop disguised as love. And the key to breaking this cycle isn't shouting louder, it's not reacting. When you stop dancing to someone else's rhythm, the music loses its meaning. Every time you respond to a provocation, you are giving back control. You are saying, without words, that you are still emotionally available. The reaction is the fuel of those who live by testing you. Now, when you choose silence, the game crashes. It's like taking the battery out of the remote control and watching someone else press the buttons. In vain. Constancy in silence is what changes everything. Because an isolated response can look like maturity, but the real power is in the repetition of its absence, in maintaining your posture, even when they poke your ego. When they realize that you are unfazed, the real discomfort begins not in you, but in them. It's like breaking a mirror and refusing to pick up the pieces. You leave the scene, and the other person is stuck in the reflection of what they did. No reaction, no echo, no stage. Just him, his own conscience and silence. And in this trio, the truth comes out. Because where there is no noise, even the whisper of regret echoes loudly. Be honest, how many times have you reacted expecting recognition and only received more pain? How many long messages ended in short replies? Reacting is an illusion of control. It looks like you're taking action, but in practice, you're spinning in circles. And the cycle only ends when you decide to get out of it. Not reacting is an act of courage. It's not passivity, it's self-control. It's understanding that not every provocation deserves a response, and that true respect begins when you respect yourself first. Believe me, when you don't respond, you take a stand. And, paradoxically, that's when they start to listen to you. So the next time the temptation to respond hits you, breathe. Remember, silence is not weakness, it is strategy. And every well-applied strategy, sooner or later, becomes a victory. Because whoever breaks the cycle changes history. The greatest source of power in a relationship is not who speaks the most, it is who controls the least and lets the other person lose control. When someone feels like they can no longer predict their behavior, something changes. Comfort disappears, security falters, and a silent discomfort is born. You stop being a certainty and become a doubt. And doubt bothers more than any fight. As long as you react as usual, the person feels in control. But when you change the pattern, disappear, silence, break the cycle, it goes on alert. The mind seeks patterns, repetitions, logic. And when you no longer find yourself where you expected, panic begins. Because not knowing what comes next is losing power. Unpredictability is a powerful weapon. You don't need to shout, disappear from the map, or post indirect messages. Just change the energy, being where you don't expect. Remain silent where they expected drama. Show growth when they expected a fall. This changes the emotional game. And whoever underestimated you loses their ground. It's as if you changed languages without warning. The person tries to communicate as before, but you no longer respond on the same frequency. This creates frustration. And, over time, this frustration turns into obsession. Why doesn't he act like he used to? What did I miss? Where did I go wrong? That the lack of control becomes torment, that you don't have to be cruel, that you just need to be firm, that show that the access that existed before no longer exists. And, more than that, it cannot be forced. The mystery of your new posture becomes a constant reflection of the freedom you have achieved. And, for those who lost this access, this is a daily triggered. When someone loses control over you, they also lose the version of themselves that felt superior. And then, it's not just you who changes, it's the person's view of themselves. What was a comfort zone becomes a zone of confusion. And in this emotional whirlwind, the regret you never needed to ask for is born. Let them feel this lack of predictability. Let them feel like you've evolved and that it's taken them off the script. Because true transformation isn't just about walking away. It's about making it clear that, even if you come back, you want nowhere to step. And the fear of losing control becomes the biggest punishment. Is there anything more powerful than excluding someone? Yes, do not delete, but also do not allow access. It's like leaving a door visible, illuminated, but with the lock changed. You are there, present, alive. Evolving but unreachable, this creates a cruel paradox for anyone who has ever held the key, seeing, but not touching. Knowing you lost but not being able to forget. Blocking someone is quick, clean, almost impersonal. It's cutting it off once and for all. But letting someone see your evolution from afar without being able to participate in it is a lesson in detachment, with the flavor of a lesson that with each achievement of yours, a silent regret is born in the othered. Because everything that was once accessible is now just window dressing. That this inaccessible presence is what really teaches that you don't need to rub your happiness in anyone's face. That it just needs to exist, shine, and keep its distance. That this creates discomfort. Because the mind, when it sees something that was once its own and can no longer reach, goes into conflict. And in this conflict, repentance is born. It's like good music playing in another room. You hear it, recognize it, miss it. But you can't turn up the volume. You no longer have control. And each new note from you, each step, each achievement is like a reminder that she already had the chance to be there. But he lost. And now all that's left is to listen from afar. That it's not about revenge, it's about positioning. It's showing, without words, that you move forward. But don't forget to lock the door behind you. Because not just anyone deserves to come back. And even if it knocks, the key is no longer useful. This is not pride. This is self-worth. Leaving the door locked does not mean living in anger. On the contrary, it's about having enough peace not to completely close yourself off, but enough maturity not to let them enter without deserving it. Whoever wants access should also evolve, because doors open to those who knock respectfully, not to those who try to break in. So stay visible, keep growing. But never leave the key in the wrong hands again. Let them see, let them wish, let them feel, but understand. What was lost now requires more than a request to be regained. It demands change. And not everyone is willing to pay that price. You don't need to write a huge text or send indirect messages on Instagram. The biggest response is silence added to your evolution. Or when someone loses you and, after a while, sees you smiling, growing, living, something changes inside. Not because you said something, but because your absence became a test of strength. And that hurts more than any speech. True repentance does not come from scolding. It is born from contrast. From the moment when someone compares who you were to who you have become and realizes that they have stopped, as long as you chose to follow. While you, even injured, rebuilt your dignity. This cannot be explained. It is shown. Your every step towards emotional freedom is a silent reminder, an unread notification. You could be here that appears without you having to write it. And the more you transform, the more the absence of the other becomes evident. Not because you made a point of it, but because time is merciless to those who waste it. You know that feeling when you see someone shining and think, I already had that. That's where regret lives. That's seeing the same person you once underestimated being admired, seeing who you tried to control becoming untouchable. This dismantles any ego, because the most powerful victory is the one that happens in silence. That it's not about posting overcoming phrases. It's about living a life that is, in itself, the greatest lesson. It's waking up every day with purpose, while the other person is trapped in the illusion of control they've lost. And little by little, the question changes from why did he disappear to why did I let him go? This inversion is elegant revenge. You don't need to run after someone who turned their back on you. You need to chase yourself. To rebuild yourself, discover yourself, strengthen yourself. Because a heart at peace is the most brutal response someone who has caused pain can receive. And this cannot be bought. It cannot be forced. It cannot be explained. Sit down. So Next time you think about sending that message, think about the impact of saying nothing. Think about the weight of a silence that blooms. Because, in the end, it is impossible to forget who showed us, in silence, what it means to value yourself. Everyone leaves memories. But few people become mysteries. The memory may be beautiful, but the mystery. The mystery holds. It pokes the mind when no one is looking. It appears in silences, in comparisons, in unanswered questions. And that's where the power lies. You don't disappear, you remain an enigma. When you break the pattern, something lights up. If they expected a reaction and you offered silence. If they expected drama and you offered indifference, you changed the game. That the human mind loves solving puzzles. But when pieces are missing, like your explanation, your presence, your affection, the puzzle becomes an obsession. That it is very easy to forget those who shout, but almost impossible to ignore those who elegantly silence. Because mysterious silence creates theories, doubts, speculations, and those assumptions, however distorted, keep you there in the minds of those who thought they knew you. That you become not just a memory, but an unanswered question. That becoming a mystery is not about disappearing from the world. It's about not giving what they expect. It's making your absence a subtle presence, which appears in unpredictable ways. A book left on the shelf, a song that plays by chance, a smell in the air. It is these details that build his silent legend. And the most interesting thing, people forget routine memories, but they relive mysteries more intensely as time passes, because every mystery gains new layers. That when you become that kind of presence, not accessible, but always there, you occupy a place that no one can replace. The key is not to explain yourself, not justifying yourself. Because everything that is explained loses its charm. That everything that is delivered without resistance loses value. Be selective with what you show, what you respond to, what you reveal. Leave blank spaces. Leave room for interpretation. Whoever wants to understand should investigate, and you might never find out. Remember, a memory is revisited with affection. A mystery is pursued with restlessness. And you decide what you want to be. When you choose the path of mystery, you don't just leave someone's life. That you transform your absence into something impossible to ignore. The mind begs for closure. That's why, when you leave and still try to explain yourself, you end up offering comfort. You give an end, a logic, a final point. But what if, this time, you didn't explain? What if the story ended mid-sentence? The void left by the lack of closure becomes torment. Every time you try to close with a justification, you are, without realizing it, giving the other person what they need most to move forward. Peace. But peace is not given to those who took yours from you. Leaving it without an outcome is not cruelty, it is balanced. It's letting them feel the weight of their own confusion. The unconscious works tirelessly, trying to understand what is left open. And what is not closed is repeated. That your gesture of silence can become an echo that constantly returns to the other person's mind. That why didn't she explain? Was I the problem? What did I do? And these questions have no answers. This doesn't mean leaving regrets in the air. It means withdrawing with maturity, without the need for dramatics. It's like leaving as if you were saying, I have nothing left to deliver here. And this lack of explanation becomes a mirror. The other finds himself faced with his own mistake, his own loss. And that, yes, is transformative. Human beings tolerate rejection. It even supports hate. But he can't stand not knowing. Continuous doubt is corrosive. What is clear becomes the past. What is ambiguous remains. Therefore, when you choose not to give closure, you occupy a permanent space even if you are absent. Imagine a film that ends without revealing what happens to the protagonist. A lot of people would hate it, but everyone would talk about him. That's how you are when you leave without saying everything. It becomes a topic. It becomes a recurring memory. And, deep down, this silent impact is worth much more than any goodbye letter. Not giving closure is freeing yourself from the obligation to heal the other. It's understanding that not every wound needs medicine, some need time and absence. Let the silence speak. Let the doubt remain. Because sometimes the most unforgettable story is the one that was never finished. You don't need to run after immediate justice. Time has a subtle and infallible way of organizing things. It shows who pretended well, who really felt, and who missed the chance because they thought you would always be there. The silence that today seems invisible tomorrow becomes a deafening absence. And time makes this sound increase. When you disappear, the pain may not even be felt the first day. At first, the other person's ego screams louder. But over time, the void begins to speak. That notification that doesn't arrive. That presence that doesn't return. That calm that has now become eternal silence. That's when regret wakes up. Don't underestimate the power of the days that pass. As you grow, those who stood still feel every inch of emotional distance. Time heals those who move, and it punishes those who expect everything to go back to the way it was before, without effort. Every day away, every achievement of yours, is a reminder you followed, and I stayed. The beautiful thing is that time doesn't need to be pushed. He just needs to be respected. As long as you live, he acts. While you reinvent yourself, he teaches. While you focus on you, he takes care of your emotional justice. It's like leaving a letter in the mail with no return address. 1 hour, she arrives. Whoever lost will understand. It could take weeks, months, or even years. But the void you left will become a broken clock stopped at the exact time you left. And the more time passes, the harder it will be to find someone to occupy the same place. Because absence, when well cultivated, becomes a brand. Its greatest strength lies in not interrupting the process. Let time do the work your anxiety tries to anticipate. Whoever hurt you needs to have space to realize this themselves. Because the regret that comes from outside is temporary. What is born of time remains and teaches. Then breathe. Trust. Life. Because while you learn to love yourself, time teaches others what they have lost. And, in the end, the most beautiful thing won't be the reunion, it will be realizing that you no longer need him. Because time passed, and it made you better. And now I ask you, how many times have you erased yourself trying to be understood? How many times did you insist on giving explanations to people who never wanted to understand? Maybe it's time to do something different. To stop screaming for attention and start building your silence with dignity. You don't have to beg anymore. You no longer need to prove yourself. What would happen if, this time, you chose yourself? If you let time speak, instead of responding in a hurry, your absence can teach more than any begged presence. And your growth in silence can be the biggest regret in the lives of those who didn't know how to value you. The question is, are you ready for this? So how about starting now? Take a deep breath. Look ahead. Choose not to respond to that message, not to seek that explanation. Choose follow. And if this content made sense to you, if any part touched you, comment below the word unattainable. Because this is the new version of someone who learned to respect themselves. It is clear. Subscribe to the channel right now and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos like this. Here, you will always find the strength you need to hear at the exact moment when silence speaks loudest.